The honourable member for Toronto Danforth.
Knock, knock, Mr. Speaker. Who's there, you ask? Well, me and a big bunch of comedians. And you know what else? They're a lot funnier than me. But they are here today on a more serious note because they are here in this place to be advocating on behalf of stand-up comedians across our country. As a country, we take pride in our comedians. But many of us probably don't realize that comedy is not a recognized artistic activity or a discipline by the Canada Council for the Arts. And in fact, it isn't recognized as an art form by any province or territory across our country. That's not something to laugh about. Thank you to Sandra Battaglini and all of the comedians who form part of the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comedians for your advocacy and your hard work on this issue. Sometimes you make us laugh, sometimes so hard we cry. We stand with you and we take so much pride in your art form.
Hello and welcome to Glorious and Free. I'm your host, Bryan O'Gorman. This is our guest today, Miss Sandra Battaglini. How you doing, Bats?
Great.
Good to see you, buddy.
Glorious.
Sandra's a singer, obviously, but also
that wasn't really that good.
You're a great actress and an amazing comedian in Toronto and a very active social force in this town of ours.
So what we're doing right now is, building sort of a case, right, to industry and government of the economy around comedy. Right. What we don't have here is a star system. We don't have any recognition beyond the stage, and that's one of the biggest problems. Like when I went to Ottawa, I kept telling this story, that the story of the Canadian comedian is, I call it a circle of entrapment. It's like once you headline a club or do Just for Laughs, you've hit the ceiling. And then you're like, well, you know what? Look at America's right there. I'm going to go to America. And then you're faced with $5,000 or $10,000 for an O1 visa. Right. And then stand-up isn't considered an art form, so there's no grants at all available. And, we could use stuff to travel, to create albums. And then finally, when we pitch our TV shows, often we get told, oh, you know what? That's a great idea. Go pitch it in the US because it's cheaper for us to buy American content. Yeah. And the more that I look at what the broadcasters are not doing and how much money they spend outside to buy foreign content, I mean, this is literally almost it's the source of our frustration, because the fact that our own broadcasters who get money from the government and are supposed to create Canadian content are buying American content. That's not what's happening in Quebec. The Canadians don't even know, like, what does all this Canadian content mean? You know, it's like in English Canada, the CRTC, not enforces, like, or says you have to have between 5 to 7% of Canadian content. They call it PNI. So they have to be able to report that on their financial statements. It's like programs of national interest. Would you know what some of them have been doing and had been doing? What? Is that, CBC, that they double dip. So the CBC made Mr. D, Rogers bought it, and then used that as their PNI. Do you believe this? Not only are they not making stuff, but then they're taking from other, like,
just recycling the stuff that we had, the one thing that we have, And
how could you not, like, the fact is that I was just thinking about it this morning. I'm like, we have this legacy around making comedy shows, TV shows, and yet who gets all the money? Drama. Can anybody rhyme off a list of Canadian dramas that people are shitting their pants about?
I just think that Canadians think that like we're being told that essentially this is developing our own art and in essence creating our own identity with this money. Please. But in actuality, it's just being, run through shady channels to make money for Bell and shit,
So we were, like I said, we started the petition. I was on CBC. These lobbyists from Ottawa reached out saying, hey, we would like to help because right now, this was like around in February and the NAFTA negotiations were starting. Right. And labor mobility was at the top of the Canadian team, the negotiating team, to make it easier for Canadians to work around the world. And they thought, this fits. And what we were asking for is the comedian would be one of the jobs that's NAFTA approved. Like there's a whole list of occupations.
We'd essentially be recognized as actual artists, stand-up comedy, comedians.
Yeah,
for the first time in Canada's history.
Exactly.
Because then they'll give grants to like interpretive dancers to pretend to be trees in front of nobody.
Oh, I've seen it.
They'll rent out like $20,000 theaters, like $20,000 a night, and then put on some show nobody goes to, and all those people are rich and have cars and houses. Meanwhile, we're on stage literally every night. We generate money. You know how much money fucking comedy generates? It's just putting people in bars. How much tax dollars goes through because we fucking do shows. These fucks do these ballets where nobody shows up, Sandra.
Yeah, I know.
And they're putting millions of dollars into these fucking costumes, but fucking put on shows that nobody gives a fuck about.
That's why we have to do an economic impacts assessment, the association. Like, we need to show the economy around comedy. I think that the other part of all of this, it does make you really angry because you're like, how could this have happened? How did this get away from us? But listen, the reality is that, and this is what I've learned from government too. It's like, if you want something to change, they're there. Their job is to listen to you. They took a meeting. That's what they do. They're there for their constituents. And everybody who's created whatever of an industry in Canada on whatever grounds were just because people, were lobbying, where they were putting pressure on certain areas. Where like the Canada Arts Council was formed in the late 50s after there was a royal commission done on the arts and culture in Canada. And there's this really amazing quote where it says, our novelists, our poets, our short story writers are poor in Canada, and the only way to succeed is to leave. And I say, 65 years later, that's our story.
Canadian comics are speaking up, but not to make you laugh. Unconfirmed reports are circulating that SiriusXM is handing over an exclusively Canadian comedy radio channel, Canada Laughs, over to Just for Laughs. The news has consumed many Canadian comics' social media feeds, some calling out the companies, saying it will bankrupt Canadian comedians.
Hi, everybody. Howie Mandel here, and very proud Canadian, very proud comedian. I'm just going to take a second. There's been some misinformation on Twitter and that. And for those that don't know, I know there's Americans watching too. One of the stations was Canada Comedy or Comedy Canada.
Canada Laughs.
I love Canada. I love being a comedian. And I'm committed to making Canada, to put it on the map as when you think Canada, you're going to think brilliant comedy. Good night, everybody. I love you. And sorry.
Thank you so much for being here today. This is incredible. Thank you. It's really, as far as I can tell, an historic day for all of us. I just had a conversation with Bruce on the phone, and he created a document for things that he'd like me to share with you guys, and I don't know what I did with my phone. There it is. Okay, great. And I wear my glasses. Oh my God. Holy shit. What a situation over here. Honest to God. Honest to God. So the first point is, SiriusXM had been looking closely at the performance of the channel for some time and wanted to improve it to attract a larger audience. And after much consideration, they wanted to find a solution to keep the comedy channel in Canada. So Sirius approached Just for Laughs about partnering. And then they go on to say, okay,
Hang on.
Yeah.
So we still don't know what is the measure in the world of satellite radio of struggling, because in traditional radio, it's ratings and advertising revenue and listenership, but it's not necessarily the case. So we still have answers on that point. What determined why they were struggling?
Well, the idea that the channel was struggling is actually something I would be very interested to see hard proof on, considering I had a show on there for 3 years and I asked for numbers for 3 years and they could not provide it.
Next point is that SiriusXM has no CRTC obligation to keep a comedy channel. Together, both companies regret not notifying comedians earlier in this decision. I said, you guys have a PR problem. That our community doesn't feel like we're valued by you, that we're honored by you, that American content and talent takes precedent over us across the board. And that's where we don't find it acceptable. I don't know. To me, it seems like more people are watching comedy than ever before. They love going out. There's such great talent. And that was the other part of my argument, where it's like, there's this like tribe. I call it a tribe. It's like an intellectual class, a genius class, really, that are just fucking depressed in front of their couches. You know what I mean? Having to do day jobs when if we honored, like, we have to honor them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's like recognition, respect.
Yeah. It's fucking human fucking
And
decency.
if that sounds like
Christ's sake.
mafia, respect. What are you gonna do?
But I mean, like, what better kind of person can you try to help than somebody that just tried to make people happy their whole lives, and especially if they've done 25 years on the road or 30 years on the road at these clubs and generated this much money, getting paid fucking $100
Mike
a night.
McDonald, like, we didn't give that man a show.
He went to L.A.
Yeah,
That's what he ended up doing. And this is the thing. We have these unbelievable talents, and like you said, so often they go to the States and they never return. And the big thing I think that we need from them too, though, I think that some of the responsibility is on their shoulders, is guys like Jim Carrey and Mike Myers and stuff. They need to step up more and
help us out.
And also live here. These guys go, I'm a Canadian when they're in Canada, but you've lived in Hollywood since you were 17. What the fuck are you talking? You're not Canadian.
Yeah.
You're like Canadian, like Justin Bieber's Canadian.
Very proud Canadian, very proud comedian.
But that's what I feel too sometimes, where it's like, I'm sure, we have that tug where we're like, we should be in Hollywood, we should be in LA, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I'd like to spend more time just working in other places for sure. But I feel like, I don't know, if things are not right, then you have to change it or figure out how to make it better.
Hello, this is Daddy. Hi, Daddy. It's Applehead. Applehead? I thought you was dead. What? I thought you was long gone, Applehead. No, silly. I just changed my appearance and moved to Vatican City because everyone was acting all weird about me fucking all those children. Man, that is some bullshit, Applehead. They trying to do the same shit to me. After I gave them 30 years of my career. I gave them 30 years! 30 years and all my pee! That's why I'm calling you. I know you're going through a rough spot right now, but you'll get through it. Remember, you're not just some gross pedophile. You're a gross, rich, famous pedophile. You'll be fine. The system was made for you. Man, I know you're right, Applehead. But they coming for my freedom. They saying I was running a sex cult just because I had a harem of children chained to a statue of myself surrounded with candles. What's the definition of a sex cult anyway, Applehead? Seriously, I'm asking you the definition. I cannot read, and these lawyers keep throwing around big words like rapist and life sentence. Oh, Daddy, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Maybe a roller coaster ride at my house would cheer you up. I can't go for a motherfucking roller coaster ride right now, but I really want to, but I can't. I'm even trying to have a relationship with my kids. I mean, not my kids, someone else's kids I want to have a relationship with. But come on, man, it's not fair. They out here calling me a pedophile. Oh, but Daddy, you are a pedophile. You taped it and everything. I have the tape. It's a great piece of cinema. I know, and these motherfuckers out here bringing it up. Did I have sex with children? I mean, that depends on your definition of children. If by children you mean someone who is not yet an adult, then yes, I have had sex with many, many children. But all those rapes were in the past. You can't arrest people for things that happened before now. I know, the past is absolutely irrelevant. They're lying on me saying I'm a bad person just because I happen to date a few underage sex zombies. They lied on me when there really are girls out there that are sex slaves and sex cults and actually do get abused in a basement by famous R&B singers in Chicago, Illinois at a recording studio, and they aren't allowed to eat or sleep without my motherfucking permission. They lying on me! Oh, I know, Daddy, I know. Oh, gosh. I mean, just think of all those children. That's all I do is think of children, Applehead. If I'm guilty of anything, it's having sex with children, but also having a big heart. Just do what I did. Fake your own death, get some plastic surgery, and move to Vatican City where kid fucking is legal. So wait, you saying I'll move to the Golden City where the Pope lives and I can sleep with all my children? Daddy, it's a pedophile's paradise. That is fantastic news. I can't believe this place exists. Oh, sorry, Applehead, I gotta go. One of my sex slaves from my sex cult knocked over her milk bowl. Better go lay down the law. See you soon, Daddy. Bye, Daddy. Bye. Bye. Bye, Applehead. Bitch, how many times I gotta tell you to be careful when you're drinking milk out of your fucking bowl? How many fucking milk bowls I gotta buy you before you understand how to drink breast milk out of a bowl?
And now it's time for everyone in Italy's favorite segment, Endangered Allies, where we call our good endangered species friends around the planet and see how the hell they're doing. Today, we'll be talking to the Italian mountain goat. Italian mountain goat, are you there?
Yeah, I'm over here. I'm waiting. What's up?
Oh man, just chilling and having a good day. How's things going out there in Italy?
Oh, fuck. I mean, how could it go? It's the worst that it's ever been. Like, there's no other goats here. It's me. I gotta walk 10 minutes before I see another ibex goat. Think that's a fucking life for a goat? Nah, it ain't.
There's not enough ibex to have sex with out there? There's no partners? What's happening? Why are your numbers going down so hard?
I don't know. I think they think we're attractive. You know, the hunters. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's the way we walk. Something it is. They want to get. They like to hunt us. It makes them feel good. But we're gonna start to hunt them, and they're not gonna know it. They're not even gonna know what's happening.
So what do you like to eat out there? You got some good grub in them hills up there, or what do you think? Because I mean, Italy is known for its cooking. Do you cook, or do your hooves get in the way, kind of?
Yeah, I like to lick the ground, like any goat does. Fucking goat cheese. Hey, what kind of better cheese is there than goat cheese? Everybody could pretend they like provolone, whatever the fuck else, bullshit, low quality, fucking trash cheese. Reality is, goat cheese is where you like to dip your balls into. I mean, are we kidding anybody here?
No, I mean, I eat your own cheese. Do what makes you feel good. You know what I mean? I know there's still some issues out there with organized crime. Does that ever come up?
Every fucking day.
Oh, no.
Every day someone's organized around here.
Is it very prevalent in the goat world? Are there a lot of goats in the mafia?
Fucking right. We work for them.
Oh, my God.
I hope that's not a problem for your listeners.
No, we're cool. So...
You look scared.
So, Sandra, you did your master's in history on some crazy stuff that happened in Sudbury, eh?
Yeah, I did it on women who worked at Inco during World War II.
And what's that? What's Inco?
Inco is the International Nickel Company. So, do you know?
I love
what
how you
Inco?
thought everyone would know that.
I do, because
you don't work at the nickel factory.
Like as if nobody knows
No.
Inco, like biggest nickel mine in the world for the longest
Buddy,
time.
I do so little nickel buying these days.
That was a situation. Yeah, I know, right? Well, you probably buy more nickel than you think.
Bro, is it in
It's
a
in
lot
everything.
of stuff?
Yeah, and when there's war, that's when it's the most prosperous.
What do they use it for? Like guns and shit?
Yeah. So during World War II, nickel became a war priority. So a lot of the other mines, like gold mines, were shut down, and then everything was focused to Sudbury. So miners, like gold miners, would come up to Sudbury, and because it's a heavy metal and it's mining, it was illegal for a woman to work underground. And the fact that a lot of men were out at war, they needed another pool of labor, and they couldn't employ 13-year-old boys like they used to because that became illegal. So
But they used to have like a force of child.
Oh, yeah.
Oh really?
Oh yeah.
Fucking
Absolutely.
hell.
So then they couldn't use this. They couldn't use child labor. So they're like, oh, let's use women. So a lot of women were rock pickers. So when the rock came was blasted out of the mine, they would pick the rock, before it goes to get smelted. There's this whole process. So rock pickers was a big job for women, and there would be rock picker A, B, C, and D, and then they would that's your rate of pay. But the way that they sold it in the media was hilarious, because they would be like, "Look at, here's Barb on this whatever machine. It's like an ice cream machine." So they feminized. They tried to make everything that they were doing very feminine, because they didn't want anybody to believe that these women were going to take over the men's jobs. That when the men came back from war, that their jobs would be there waiting for them. So there was a lot of hysteria around this. So my thesis is actually called "Don't Go Down the Mine, Mama," because there was like a song in, like, you know, I think it was out in the late 19th century about, like, don't go down the mine, daddy, because they didn't want men, you know, it's dangerous to go down in the mine. But then when women started working in Inco, they're like, don't go down the mine, mama. And then no women did. They and then they would, all the reasons why they wouldn't let women down under was really funny, because they were saying one time, there's a story about once when the Queen went underground and it created all sorts of havoc. So the first woman didn't go underground till like 1976, but they did surface jobs. That's what they did during the war, and you know, they needed that labor. Like, it was significant. The thing about mining was that for, you know, a lot of like wartime work and women in war, it was the most temporary. Like, it was just there. They had just overturned an order in council. So the War Measures Act, you know, allowed people to create all sorts of new rules. So they put in a special order in council so that it made it legal for women to work at a mine, period. Like, before, it was, they couldn't even work surface. They were only allowed to be receptionists and whatever. So for the time of the war, they overturned it. And then when the war was done, it went back to where it was. Whereas in aviation, that industry, and automobiles, like, a lot of women stayed on and worked in different departments. So in Inco, it was like, you know, because a lot of you know, feminist historians will say, well, World War II did nothing for women's, you know, for the women's movement or for women's gains, because, like, they were brought into the workforce and then they were kicked out. And that's true. But in Inco, it was like the most, like, the
feminized kind of.
Well, no, it was the most most blatant example, because they were only there
just,
for the period of the war, and then they had to leave.
They literally fired them up.
Yeah. Have you ever been underground?
No, I would never.
I went 3,000 feet. When I was doing my research, I went all the way down.
Yeah.
I would never go down again, because I'm like, we're in a hole in the earth. And literally, like, it's pitch black. And these miners have, like, their drills are as big as this room. Like, they sit on the ground and they just drill up like this. That's how big they are. It's like a machine gun. Like, this is like what's a big machine gun movie? Terminator, like, bigger than that. But I mean, these are machines that are like, but they make a lot of money and they do a lot of coke, apparently.
Really?
In Sudbury right now. So yeah,
that nickel money, baby.
But check out how interesting this is. So I was doing my research and I was in Ottawa at the archives. I see in one of the ledgers how many tons of nickel went to Hitler. So Inco was an American company made during war. Sudbury literally fed the Nazi war machine, because that nickel went to Germany.
How did it get to Germany?
Because it was an American company, and that was the deal they made. I mean, there were so many companies in the United States that were doing that.
So we were getting shot with our own bullets, essentially. It's like it was the metal that made Nazi bullets, and then we got shot. Oh, yeah. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
See, that's that dirty shit that happens in war, like, you know, the Bush family and stuff, where they're playing both sides, where they're like funding both sides of a war, and you're just like, literally, you're profiting off of the worst possible human atrocities that man's ever known.
How did they bury George Bush, like, as if he was a saint or something?
Wasn't that fucking beautiful?
I was like, what?
Oh my god!
What happened in the old days? You know, when there were bad leaders, they hung him up, like Mussolini. They hung him up upside down in the town square.
Yeah.
They didn't do that to George Bush.
No, they let him live a happy life.
And even the George Jr., like, he does speaking engagements. I mean, you know, the fact that people think, like, they idolize, they're like, oh, they're so nostalgic about George Bush. And I'm like, are you people insane? You've been asleep forever. And now that this guy who's come out, the only reason everyone's like awake is because he's so not what anybody else has done, and he's literally just says it like he says it.
Yeah.
And everyone's freaked out. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's there. And I was like, no, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Well, because it's like slowly they like numbed us to the idea of these psychopaths being in office and stuff. And now we see Trump and we're like, yeah, well, fuck, whatever. There's 12 school shootings a day. It must fucking, I don't know. It's the way the world is now.
Yeah.
But like with like George Jr., it's so crazy how they've, even in like the liberal end of the media saying like, you know, he was much better than Trump. At least he wasn't this, and at least, and you're like, George Bush, like he fucking killed 1 million Iraqis, and like, you know, in the first couple years of his tenure, you know, he was attacking countries that had nothing to do with the attack that happened to him, and yet people just sat around and watched it. And how much money, we're talking about money laundering, how much money gets laundered through that weapons industry and stuff, right? And you're talking about also those governments when they're socialist, like, you know, when it's socialist for the corporations. So like, yeah, well, I always thought about that. Like, America spends so much money on defense, not on offense really, but on the military. Right? Spends so much money on that military, but really all that money goes to the weapons companies and the contracting companies.
So
because
how is that capitalism?
It's also exactly, and it's also food companies. It's also the toilets that they have to have at the camps. Like some of these camps too. I don't know if like people really understand like the kind of like what the bases look like. I've performed at a couple of them.
Really?
And yeah, they're like there's one in the UK called Mildenhall I've been to and stuff, and it's crazy because they make the inside of the base look like America. So you'll be like driving through the middle of it, and then you get in and like even down to the pavement is the same as the pavement would be in America. They have like car dealerships with wacky wavable inflatable arm man or whatever, you know. They have America flags everywhere. They have McDonald's, they have Starbucks, they have everything. It looks like America. So when you're in, it looks like you're in a small town in America.
Wow.
And it's like literally you get off the base and it's all cobblestoney and Britishy and little houses, but on there you can't even see like the other end. You can't even see like Britain because you're like kind of like, you know, the fences and everything like that. Wow. But it's very bizarre. It's to keep their morale up and shit. Yeah, but
maybe keeping the morale up if they're just at home, you know, farming in their fields. That's the morale.
Yeah, I think they're in like 130 something countries. They have bases. But
that's why like when people talk about like gun control in America, it will never happen. You can't have that conversation without like the conversation about gun control outside of the country, because like I read this book called was it called The Way of the Gun or something? Yeah. It was so fascinating. And when you look at the fact that America is everywhere, it has been everywhere. When they go somewhere in like, you know, Iraq or the Middle East or wherever they are, they leave so many weapons behind. They just weaponize everywhere they go. So it's like until they stop this empire of like, you know, domination, then they'll never stop. Guns will always be a big problem. Like we're starting to have more guns here because of America.
Oh, it's a big problem.
We're not starting wars.
No, it's crazy, man. And it's like the amount of like again like them making the guns and producing the guns. There's so much money in that that I don't see that ever slowing down. And on top of that, those guns are out there. Like you're not getting them back. The kind of people that stockpile AR-15s aren't the kind of people that are going to hand them over to the government when they ask for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Here, I'm just gonna go in the garage.
Yeah. You're like, this guy's been waiting for this day. He's been fucking filling his basement for fucking 20 years waiting for this to happen, thinking the gov was going to take his weapons. But what I always think is so funny is how these fucking hillbillies think that they could beat the government. You know, like in a war. Like they're like, oh man, I'm going to have my AR-15 because I can kill the government. If the government has Apache helicopters and nuclear weapons, if they want you dead, you are dead.
Yeah.
You are fucking dead. Right? But like they have this idea that they're going to put up some crazy last stand and overthrow the American government, the greatest military that ever lived.
Well, you know, and the more that I think about it, it's like I think after I'm done this, I want to lobby the government to bring back, you know, those red tents. You know, like when you have your period, just take off. You know, just go sit in the woods. You know, like sit in the woods with other gals, bleed into the soil. Like that's what there's like this poem. I was in a story of a poem where like this indigenous woman is talking about that she used to do. They would do this. They go away, hang out, you know, and I just think like I think it would just be a better time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think as a man, I'm all for that idea. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then if
I don't know if I can bring this up because I think they might think it's a bit misogynistic coming out of my mouth. But Sandra, we're behind you. If that was going on with me, I'd be a little fucking cranky too. I think anybody.
Yeah,
Would be.
You know, you got to get used to it, and then you're just like, I don't want to do this thing today. You know, that's what I'm saying. Week off, man.
Yeah.
Red tent this shit out.
Just take off.
And before electricity, women would literally like be in sync at the full moon.
Oh my God.
So it wouldn't be like, you know, but now we have electricity.
I don't know. There might be a lot of murders in those camps, though. You know what I mean? Just all those girls, like, you know, hanging out on their periods together. There'd be a lot of yelling.
Yeah, you never know. It might just clean things out, you know?
Maybe this is what we need for this, like, our sex relations these days. It's a weird time, you know? I remember, like, I think that all this stuff, like, especially recently with this Me Too stuff, I think that needed to happen because there were some fucked up people that needed to be called out. I just want there to be a point where people are having fun again. Because do you remember, like, that's the point, right? If we're not, like, remember Emma Goldman? If I don't want your revolution unless I can dance in it, right? What is the point of clearing these people out if we're not going to actually try to live with each other and be happy and really go for equality, right? Like, it's not, I know it's an awkward thing to try to articulate as a fucking dude. It's just that, like, I want people to be happy, and I know it's a real stupid, simple thing for a straight white guy to say. It was just like, but at the end of it, if we're not working towards our happiness and cooperation, what are we working towards? You know?
No, I know. I just think that's why there's so much, like, tension, because everyone wants to be right. You know that whole thing, right and wrong? It's like the left, I even hate using that word because it's so ridiculous, but let's say in the U.S., the Democrats want to make the left, the right wrong, or the Republicans wrong, and vice versa. And so, but the reality is it's a bunch of cunts on either side. Is that okay to use in the show? So it's a bunch of cunts all over the place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You, like, just admit you're a cunt, and then we can move to the next place.
Yeah, exactly. You're a professional cunt. That's what you do for a living. You cunt for a living.
Yeah, you cunt.
You cunt people like us for a living.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the deal with a lot of those people that are just leaders in general. I don't trust their position as, like, completely. Like, I don't trust them, like, existing, like, because they're power brokers. Their whole idea, like, politics is the art of controlling your environment, right?
Yeah.
And that's what they do. They're going to do what it takes to control their environment. And I don't want to be in your I don't want to be controlled by
But I think for some people it's not as, like, you know,
dubious or
it's not as, like, masterminded as we might think. Like, you know, I've met a bunch of politicians now, right? Like, to me it's like I do not want to be a politician, but I think that, like, my own MP, Julie DeBrusen, she became an MP because there was something, they were going to shut down one of the pools in her neighborhood, the public pools, and she was like, went there and demonstrated, and then I think it just continued to inspire her. So for some people, I think they really do feel like they're doing good. Like, I met Kathleen Wynne because she was like, she wanted to meet with us when we had a letter writing campaign for the.
So there's still some good people in there.
Yeah, I think that. Look,
some of them are motivated to help people, right? I do get that, but I just think they get to a certain point and then they go, "Well, this is how people should live, and how I think they should live." And it's like, once you get to that, I don't know.
I think, you know, the lie for us is that when we think that what illusion do we have that Justin Trudeau is going to do everything for us? I mean, that's hilarious.
Exactly, right?
We're just like, oh, I don't want to do it, so this guy's going to do it for me.
Because he likes gay people. You're like, he's going to do all my homework for me.
That's right. Yeah.
Retarded.
He's going to make stand-ups, like, we can just, like, you know, do stand-up a couple of weeks a year and then just live on a beach. Like, why shouldn't the government, you know, fund that?
So anyway, that was our awesome conversation with Sandra Battaglini, bro. Good to fucking see you. Love you, buddy. Let's do it all.
Much. I love you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And tell us where we can find you online.
At Sandra Bat. I even hate saying this now, this social media bullshit.
Whore out, mama. Whore out. Get those hooker boots on and fucking do this.
At Sandra Bat, 2 T's. Instagram, Sandra Battaglini. Whatever. SandraBattaglini.net. Doesn't that sound like... And then my phone number is 647-883.
Call her.
Yeah.
Have a convo. Have a conversation.
Have
with
a conversation.
The Queen of Abreeves.
I could be faxed at any post office I'm standing in.
Always working, always killing it. Sandra Battaglini, everybody, on Glorious and Free.